and welcome to this video on Book 4. I took a little pause and I created a video earlier on just Satan's Great Soliloquy from early in Book 4. I thought it deserved special attention. Book 4, as you could see, is huge. It's over 1,000 lines long, and I just want to say, in no uncertain terms, that I'm leaving a lot out here. Again, the point of these videos is to really, hopefully, people teach Paradise Lost and to help classes and new readers approach the text in a way that breaks down some of the comprehension barriers that I think are pretty typical. So book 4, we really enter pre-fallen paradise, pre-fallen Eden. And I teach this poem to AP seniors in high school, and we do spend a little time before looking at book 4 researching the colleges they love and their websites and the images that the colleges carefully curate for their websites. And I think they're very Edenic. So the title of this presentation is Eden Foreshadows the College Brochure, a preview of Book 4 of Paradise Lost. And this is the chunk that really starts after the soliloquy, so 114 to 1015. As usual, I start my class reviewing the invocation. I've discussed that. And this is huge. So if you want to pause the video here, that's totally cool if you want to do that. I think this is really, if you looked at one slide in this presentation, it should be this one. There is a ton, as you can tell, going on in book 4. In what bracketing your text or just having this slide open as you read your text, you could do that. However, if you're a tactile person who likes to write in your book, if you just like having this open as you read the text, that's fine. This really just sort of guides you through what's the basics of what's happening. So I actually want to read it because it's amazing what is accomplished. Again, we started after the personalized sort of Miltonic invocation that starts book 1. The first 2 books of Paradise Lost really are about hell, about the nature of being damned by God, and about the varied characters with varied personalities and speaking styles that live inside of hell. It isn't as sort of homogeneous as of a place as one might imagine. Book 3 deals with the difficulty of heavenly characters as literary characters. But book 4, we finally get Satan has the directions to Eden. We know the story, right? And one of the great challenges is for Milton to keep us excited, even though we know what's going to happen. So I would mark your books or have this slide. So 114 to 131. Satan, after his soliloquy, is his body is affected. He's disfigured. 132 to 171. There's a lot of geography in book 4, and we have some really great geography here. Geographical details of Eden before the fall, what's called prelapsarian, before the fall. 172 to 287. That big chunk. Great epic simile. Satan approaches Eden like a wolf hunting its prey. So that's actually pretty interesting. Eden has a tree of life, a tree of knowledge. There's a particular river. And again, your reading antennae are sensitive now because you remember the rivers of hell that I talked about. It turns out Eden, before the fall, has rivers too. And Milton, because he's Milton and can't resist, compares the Edenic paradisal landscape to other paradises in other mythological literatures. And then 288 to 357, we have the first human beings. We have a lot of ink spilled on the gender roles before the fall. What is idyllic about what a man is and what a woman is and how they relate to each other? Weirdly, and Professor Rogers out of Yale in his Milton class makes a big difference in the description of Eve's hair and Adam's hair, believe it or not. And even the animals experience a particular kind of harmony before the fall. 5, Satan comments on seeing paradise, 358 to 392. Absolutely brilliant. More on that later. Satan, like Proteus, a shape-shifting sea god we read about in the Odyssey, among other places. Satan changes shape. That's really interesting. And 7, Adam and Eve talk to each other. Pay really close attention. Just like we saw demons talk to each other, just like we saw the Son and God, the Father, talk to each other. Okay, Adam and Eve talk to each other. What do we see? What stands out? What's surprising to you? Satan angrily comments on Adam and Eve's happiness. That's interesting. Uriel and Gabriel, the angels, again, we're reminded, notice what just happened, right? We're just in Eden. And now suddenly there's angels. And they're chatting, unfallen angels, archangels, chatting about their suspicions regarding a hellish invasion of paradise. Even the angels seem to know something's up. Back to Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, weirdly, and I don't talk about this in this video, but think about what your preconceived notions of life before the fall would be, or think about what your paradise would be. You see a lot of on social media. I'm a older person, and you see a lot of people with loved ones going on these like tropical vacations. In paradise, very rarely involves work, and but Adam and Eve work. So I don't know. I would pay attention to that. Their sleep, number 11. They make love, line 689 to 775. And then the chapter ends, the last few lines, angels Zephon and Gabriel catch Satan whispering in Eve's ear. And they have a sort of a very difficult conversation. So hopefully these chunks, either annotated in your book, ideally, frankly, or just having the slide open, helps you through the chapter. So feel free to pause the video and get that done. Okay, I'm cheating because this chapter is so damn big. So in the other videos, I center my presentation and my preview around an obviously significant passage from the chapter. And what I've done is taken an idea and connected several passages to it. And the idea is, what do we make of Eden? What's interesting about Milton's Eden before the fall? We can talk about what's interesting about hell, geographically, morally, spiritually. We could talk about conversationally, even. We could talk about what's interesting morally, geographically, spiritually, and conversationally in heaven. What's interesting about the fall? So I think there's, if I remember correctly, 5 things. Okay. First, and one of the things that stands out is the fecundity of Eden. In other words, everything is grown and almost overgrown. It's hyper-productive place. Okay? So this is Satan approaching Eden. This is, and the spelling is funky because I borrow the text from the Dartmouth website. I try to correct it, but I don't catch all of them. It's fine. Line 131 to 142, again, I would annotate these chunks in your book. Okay, so find these chunks, bracket them. So on Satan fares, and to the border comes of Eden, where delicious paradise now nearer, crowns with her enclosure green, as with a rural mound the champaign head of steep wilderness, whose hairy sides with thicket overgrown, grotesque and wild. Think about that phrase being Edenic. Access denied. Because things are so overgrown, you can't even get in. And overhead up grew insuperable height of loftiest shade, cedar and pine and fir and branching palm, a sylvan scene. And as the ranks ascend, shade above shade, a woody theater of stateliest view. So it's an incredibly fecund place, just plant upon flower upon plant. It's overgrown, frankly. But that's a quality. And here's another passage that discusses the fecundity of pre-fallen Eden. Line 233. And now divided into 4 main streams, just like hell, but in paradise, 4 rivers, runs diverse, wandering many a famous realm and country, whereof here needs no account, but rather to tell how, if art could tell, how from that sapphire fount the crisped brooks, rolling on orient pearl and sands of gold, with mazy error, which means they wander. Milton's using these words etymologically. Error doesn't mean a mistake. Error etymologically means wandering. So he's just talking about the movement of the rivers. With mazy error under pendant shades ran nectar, visiting each plant, and fed flowers worthy of paradise, which not nice art in beds and curious knots, but nature, boon, poured forth profuse, again fecund, on hill and dale and plain, both where the morning sun first warmly smote the open field, and where the unpierced shade embrowned the noontide bowers. Thus was this place, a happy rural seat of various view. So yes, Eden's beautiful, fine, but it's overgrown. It almost feels like it's on the edge of being too much, which is really interesting. Okay, the natural world of Eden before the fall is completely harmonious, but particularly around creatures who normally now, after the fall, maybe kill each other. About them, that's Adam and Eve, frisking, played all beasts of the earth, since wild, and of all chase, in wood or wilderness, forest or den, sporting the lion ramped, and in his paw dandled the kid. That's like being playful. Bears, tigers, ounces, or snow leopards, leopards, pards, gamboled before them, played. The unwieldy elephant, to make them happy, used all his might and wreathed his lithe proboscis. It's almost like the elephant is making the other animals happy by swinging his very flexible nose. You get the sense that the animal's relationship is one of a harmonious play date and not one of like a survival of the fittest situation. Also, the harmony of relationships in Eden is important, and lots of gender ink is spilt on this. And I was reading the Marjorie Hope Nicholson book, and she just makes the point, in the mid 1600s, being nurtured in pagan literature and in biblical literature and living in the 1600s, expecting Milton to be an enlightened 20th or 21st century gendered mind is insane and anachronistic. I don't love that as an argument. Let's look at this at face value, okay? This is the introduction to Adam and Eve before the fall. This is the perfect version of a human relationship, according to the poet. 2, of far nobler shape, nobler than the other animals, erect and tall, godlike erect, with native honor clad in naked majesty, seemed lords of all. The word seem is one of the most important words in this chapter and in Milton. Seemed lords of all, and worthy seemed. For in their looks divine the image of their glorious Maker shone, truth, wisdom, sanctitude severe and pure, severe but in true filial freedom placed. Whence true authority in men, though both not equal, as their sex not equal, seemed. Again, underline the word seemed. Okay, so they're not equal. Okay, here's what the poet means. For contemplation he and valor formed. So what's the point of Adam? For contemplation, intellectualizing, and nobility, valor, heroism, strength. For contemplation he and valor formed, for softness she, and sweet, attractive grace. And this is the line that Virginia Woolf and feminists long after her have a problem with, and a lot of readers. He for God only, she for God in him. He lives loyal to God, and she lives for the presence of God inside of him. His fair large front and eye sublime declared absolute rule, which I underline absolute rule because we know Milton's own personal political history, and he's generally not a fan of absolute rule. Yet here before the fall, the ideal man rules absolutely. It's interesting. And Hyacinth locks, meaning dark, round from his parted forelock manly hung, clustering, but not beneath his shoulders broad. So he has long dark hair, fine. She as a veil down to the slender waist, her unadorned golden tresses wore, disheveled. That doesn't mean she has like bed hair. Disheveled means her hair isn't like up in a bun, basically. It's all just flowing down. But in wanton ringlets waved as the vine curls her tendrils, which implied subjection, but required with gentle sway, and by her yielded, by him best received, yielded with coy submission, modest pride, and sweet, reluctant, amorous delay. I'm fascinated by the end. So clearly this isn't like a super enlightened 21st century 50-50 equality kind of relationship. But you'll notice that the subjection that is mentioned, her being obedient to him, she seems to choose it and control it. Implied subjection, required with gentle sway. By her, she's doing the yielding. He's doing the receiving. She is choosing to submit. She's choosing to use pride and modesty. And she's using to employ what he calls sweet, reluctant, amorous delay. I I'd like to suggest, yes, the historical context is important. We can't presume that authors that are hundreds of years old are enlightened about certain things like now. But I just like to suggest that most classics that I've read, whether it's Homer, Dickens, Shakespeare, Austen, uh, it's a lot more issues of gender and race and things like that are just infinitely more complicated when you actually read the words in the books. And I think this is one of those examples. And here's some more uh, sort of harmony in the pre-fall Eden, a harmony of relationships. So hand in hand they passed, the loveliest pair that ever since in love's embraces met. Beautiful. If I remember correctly, I put the acronym of my college girlfriend's name in the margins of my Merritt Hughes edition of Milton when I read that line. I hope she appreciated that. And then Eve says later to Adam, my author and disposer, what you bid unargued, I obey. So God ordains. So here Eve said, oh, God ordains this, I automatically do it. Okay. God is thy law, and thou mine. And then here's this line that, from what we know of Milton's political tracts, listen to this. She says, to know no more, in other words, to know that, like, God runs the show and you have sort of God's presence in you, so I follow you. To know no more is woman's happiest knowledge and her praise. And I love this next line. She says to Adam, with thee conversing, I forget all time, all seasons and their change, all please alike. Doesn't matter where we are, as long as I'm with you, right? It's a beautiful way of saying that. But I think it's a pretty complicated set of lines. All right. I don't have lines here. I just think it's important to mention that pleasure is at the heart of pre-fall Eden, because Eden is a word that means pleasure. So it isn't simply them following theological dictates from God. There's an element of pleasure. And part of me wonders, is what the poem is saying is the pleasure is derived from a right relationship between human beings and nature, human beings and God. Or it's just, does the universe as it exists now present pleasure just automatically? So that's interesting to think about. Here we have the importance of choice in Eden. We know Milton in the Areopagitica said, I cannot praise a fugitive and cloistered virtue. People shouldn't have books banned or censored. People should have a choice as to what they read and think about. Listen to what Eve says about her earliest remembrances. And again, I borrow the Dartmouth text, which has some of the original spelling, which is very different. So it's not really that big a deal. Eve says, what could I do? She's saying to Adam about her earliest memories. But follow straight, invisibly thus led, till I spied you, fair indeed and tall. Right? Eve had just looked Narcissus-like into a pool, and she fell in love with her own image. And watch what she says after seeing Adam. Under a platan, yet methought less fair, less winning soft, less amiable mild than that smooth watery image. She liked her own image more than the real Adam. I mean, Adam would need a self-esteem workshop now. Back I turn, she said, thou following, criest aloud, return, fair Eve. Whom fliest thou? Whom thou fliest, of him thou art, his flesh, his bone, to give thee being, I lent out of my side to thee, nearest my heart. Substantial life to have you by my side, henceforth an individual solace dear. So please don't leave. God did surgery on me. A piece of me is built you. Have coffee at least, right? So henceforth, he says, an individual solace dear. Part of my soul I seek you, right? And thee claim my other half. With that thy gentle hand seized mine, she said. You seized my hand, and I yielded. From that time, see how beauty is excelled by manly grace and wisdom, which alone is truly fair. Again, that's where the feminists, throw things at the book. But there seems to be, she's choosing to approach him. She chooses him over the watery image. He chooses to pursue her. She chooses to accept him. There's a series of choices here that are hard, easy to miss. Okay. Here's a subtle, easy to miss passage. And I just think, I know I spent a lot of time on Satan. He's just so interesting. Satan sees the love of Adam and Eve up close. And I would mark your book. It's 502 to 535. And he, as you might imagine, is repulsed. And my students and I talk about this. If you're ever dumped, I tell them, if you're ever unceremoniously dumped by someone, what you tend to see for the following weeks is everybody around you is holding hands and hugging and kissing, and everybody seems happily in a relationship. And you just see what you don't have. This is like the incredibly highly dramatic angelic version of that. So this is what Satan says. And I included this little beginning part because pay attention. Satan's always looking askance. He's always leering, but he's always looking like to the side, interestingly. Aside the devil turned for envy. That's why. Yet with jealous leer malign eyed them askance, and to himself thus planned. So this is another like mini soliloquy. Sight hateful, sight tormenting. Thus these two, oh, this is so good. These two in paradise in one another's arms, the happier Eden, shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love but fierce desire, among our other torments, not the least, still unfulfilled with pain of longing, pines. I want to point out, he's saying that the happier Eden, the happier paradise, is love, being in each other's arms. Just like when he said earlier, myself am hell, wherever I fly is hell. Hell is a mental place, not a geographical one as much. Eden and paradise is the same, right? If you have love, geography doesn't matter, just like if you're tormented, geography doesn't matter. Yet let me not forget what I have gained from their own mouths. He's reminding himself, it's not all bad. He says, all is not theirs, it seems. There's that word again. One fatal tree there stands of knowledge called, forbidden them to taste. I love this. Knowledge forbidden? Suspicious. Reasonless. Why should their Lord envy them that? Can it be, this is, you can hear Milton in the mouth of Satan. Can it be sin to know? Can it be death? And do they only stand by ignorance? Is that their happy state, the proof of their obedience and their faith? Oh, fair foundation laid whereon to build their ruin, right? He has the Smithers, right, from The Simpsons here. He's just twiddling his fingers because he realizes if their entire existence is based on ignorance, he can certainly manipulate that. It's a fair foundation. It's going to crumble easily. And of course, he tells us his plan. He's like Richard III. Here's what I'm going to do. Hence, I will excite their minds with more desire to know and to reject envious commands. And what does he say about the commands God gives them? Invented with design to keep them low, whom knowledge might exalt equal with gods. Satan is one of those people who can't imagine not being Satan, right? So he's just presuming that the reason they're created to not know things is to not be aspirational, which is his whole existence. Aspiring to be such, they taste and die. What likelier can ensue? But first, with narrow search, I must walk round this garden, and no corner leave unspied. Chance may lead where I may meet some wandering spirit of heaven. He knows there'll be lurking, angels by fountain side or in thick shade retired from him to draw what further would be learnt. And so he's thinking to himself, he's thinking of angels, and then he directs his attention right to Adam and Eve again. Not talking so they can hear it, but just addressing them in his mind. He says to them, these great lines, live while you may, yet happy pair. Enjoy till I return, short pleasures, for long woes are to succeed. It's so good. Here's an interesting detail. They have sex, all right, before the fall. This is what sex looks like, line 771. These, lulled by nightingales, embracing slept. I can't help but to think, does he have Romeo and Juliet in his mind? That was the nightingale you heard, not the lark, right? I don't know. That could be wrong. These, lulled by nightingales, embracing slept. These, Adam and Eve, lulled by nightingales, embracing slept. And on their naked limbs, the flowery roof showered roses, which the morn repaired. Now, stop for a second. They're not only making love in paradise, but the nature of their paradise is they're in a sort of natural sort of bed environment, and the roof has flowers on it, and the roses are sort of showering their naked bodies. And it says, which the morn repaired. Sleep on, blessed pair, the poet says, and oh, yet happiest if you seek no happier state, and know to know no more. That happiness in heaven to a large extent and happiness in Eden to a large extent before the fall is to know your place and know your limits. And the possibility of happiness in hell is to aspire to more. And it's just an interesting dynamic in the poem. So here are some thoughts going forward about things to think about with book 4. There's always the option of to pick a passage that stands out to you and deep dive, look up the words, probe it. I like to do this with students. Like I said earlier, pick your dream college, scroll through its pictures on the website. What are the Edenic images projected here? How does it depict its own version of Eden? Right? Racial harmony and diversity is a big one. No matter how not racially diverse a college is, the websites are all racially diverse. Scenes of city and rural life, right? Scenes of all different activities and the harmony and support therein. 2, what stands out to you about Adam and Eve before their fall, and why do you think it might be important? So is it like the details of their living space, their hair and appearance, which I didn't go over completely, their clear like acceptance of their hierarchical roles, Eve's narcissistic origins? Is it something else? 3, until now, we've only seen Satan behave and speak in hell and in the abyss. How do you feel Satan's different when his geography changes and he's in Eden? I mean, yes, he's angry, but what's interesting about the difference? 4, what do you make of the unfallen angels at the end of book 4? We know how the story ends. We know about the temptation, and we know. What do you think these angels are doing there now? And 5th, what stands out to you? So I don't know. I hope this video helps, and good luck with your reading.